Okay, there we go. That looks like we're actually doing mic things now. Appreciate that one there, Limitless Factor. We'll go and we'll start here anew. So we're looking at the F-16 today. That's going to be the jet that we're playing with. It is a light fighter, as the people would like to say. It's a lot smaller than a lot of other jets, extremely agile, very capable, and we've got some practice bombs. We've got AIM-120s. We have 9Xs on the wing pylons. Up to the advance of the F-35, this particular variant is probably the best premier seed platform for the Air Force. It's got the harm targeting pod to help out with delivering those missiles where they need to go. It's got a lot of different smart weapons. So we're going to go ahead and just take a quick trip around here, talk about some of the overview for the jet, and then we'll get into the cockpit. We'll go through some of our startup and other things that we've got today. The aircraft rather has two pylons that are wired for smart weapons, and these are the first large inner pylon here that I've got these three training Mark 82s on. The smart pylons are capable of delivering any of the GPS-guided weapons that the Air Force can employ. Those are the only two pylons on the jet that are wired for such. The inboard pylons there are plumbed for fuel, so they can take large fuel tanks. They can take certain other weapons as well, any of the free-fall type bombs. The harms can be fired from those as well. But weapons like the Maverick, JDAMs, things of that nature, those are not capable on the inner pylon there. Centerline pylon can carry either a smaller fuel tank compared to the two large ones that can be carried outboard. It can also carry various different types of ECM pods, which can be employed with the jet. There is a cheek station that is fully devoted to the targeting pod and to the HTS. It is a fly-by-wire aircraft, so there's a lot less need to do things like trimming, particularly in the vertical. Trimming in the horizontal, though, that happens, especially if you are dropping bombs or carrying asymmetrical loadout. You will need to trim left or right to make that balanced out for flight. But other than that, it's an extremely capable fighter. Little light on the gas, which is why tanking is one of the things that we're looking to get up and do today. But it's, also one that's about half the size of an F-15, which carries a lot more fuel, a lot more weapons, a lot more stores. But the F-16 was kind of the jack-of-all-trades aircraft, and eventually we ended up passing it out to just about every NATO partner in one variant or another. And the Thunderbirds, that occasionally I get to see a free air show for as they, cruise over town here in practice, also fly the F-16 as their current aircraft there for it. Maybe at some point we'll see them in F-35s and they can really up their game for their air demonstrations, but the 16 still gets them going for the time being. All right, let's go ahead and get into the cockpit, and we will go ahead and unpause so you start hearing the other sounds of everything going up. And we're going to go through our startup. We'll close the canopy here first. And engage its lock. Start up with the jet. We're going to begin by using this left-hand engine panel, main power, and then engage the starter. It's going to start cranking the engine. We're going to wait for this RPM gauge to get up to 20%. Before we push the throttle into the igniter. Usually while I'm waiting for that, I will go ahead and turn on the avionics power, which is all of these different switches here. Turn on mids, which unlike the Hornet does not give us voice, but it does give us other data transmissions. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in stored heading mode, so as soon as the jet has power, it can begin the alignment process. We also want to turn on main power for the left and right hard points. Those are the two cheek stations up front. The fire control radar, which is the FCR, and our radar altimeter. We're up to a little over 20%, so we're going to go ahead and take the throttle out of detent, which is going to ignite it. Flip that ejector seat handle down. Turn up our HUD brightness symbology and the HUD brightness itself so it can turn on. Standby ADI. Let's go ahead and uncage that one real quick. Turn on our missile warning system, our RWR, chaff and flare dispensers. Give them a program. I like using manual 2 for myself. That'll dispense about 10 units of each one. And turn on the power for the RWR. While I'm here, I like turning on my IFF system, putting it in normal mode and setting it to a code. We'll do maximum freedom. Your lighting control panels here for exterior lights is set to on by default. Depending upon where I'm at and what time of day, you can go ahead and crank up the brightness on those. I usually set mine to a code of A. This will actually beep in Morse code pattern your blinker lights on the back of the aircraft for the anti-collisions. Or 1 pulse, 2 pulse, 3 pulse, 4 pulse, Alpha Bravo Charlie. So it'll beep those letters in Morse code with the light fixtures, so you can kind of tell who's who. She does in fact scramble fast, as she is already almost aligned. This is ticking down right now. That is the DDD, the triple data, or the DED rather, the data entry display. And we're going to be using that one a lot.
Dodge 1, airborne.
Since we are actually using a helmet-mounted queuing system, we'll go ahead and turn that on, and we will calibrate it here in just a minute. We are aligned, so we're going to go ahead and take this out of stored heading mode and push it in nav. A very important note about alignment: you don't want to align while you're changing weapons on the jet. Unlike a lot of the heavier jets like the F4, the F-15, where the wings really don't wiggle-wabble a lot when you put extra weight on them, with the F-16, it is modeled that it is sensitive enough that if they go on and they put, 1,500 pounds worth of bomb plus a rack on that part of the wing, it's going to bend the wing a little bit, rattle the jet, and break the alignment. So, for procedures purposes for yourselves, either do the alignment first and then rearm, or rearm and then do the alignment during startup. I'm going to go ahead and take our altimeter and put it into its proper ready mode. There are other things that we can do, which I will either do on the ground or do on the air, depending upon what I'm doing when I'm going up to fly. But we're going to go into our list and hit enter for data link, which is the E button there on the DED. And this controls how we interact with the data link system and can establish or build a manual data link group if you're working with other aircraft. We're going to hit this little dauber switch here to the right where it says sequence, because that's going to be the next page. The first 3 numbers there, generally speaking, leave them alone. You don't want to mess with those at all. That's important for ED. Maybe eventually they will have some additional functionality for building your data link network. But for now, just don't fuss or mess with those. On the right-hand side, for our data link, this is going to display what number you appear as, to others on the network, whatever your call sign letters might be. FL is whether or not you are the flight lead, and XMIT is your transmit strength for how you're putting the data out. Generally speaking, for myself, I tend to use 2.5. And I will change this over to FN for Fenrir. We just do that by using this other little switch paddle up and down and hitting enter to cycle between the 2 letters. I'm flying as the flight lead, so I'm going to leave that as yes. We come down here to transmit, and it's a little less intuitive, but it is just pressing button 1, and it will change it to low transmit, off, and high transmit for its signal strength. With high transmit, you can get the maximum range out to the rest of your allies you're flying with. I don't know at the moment if that does anything as far as making you a little easier to detect because you're sending signals out all over the place, but, for now, that'll work. We'll hit sequence again, and this is the actual network page. Number 1 is your own ship aircraft, so you put in whatever number you like. Generally, I use 20205. All of my Fenrir flight members will start with 20 as their prefix, and then I'll put their port numbers in as the rest of it. So if I was flying with Trigger, 20265, and if I'm flying with iHort, 20152. And you can see where the little spots there where it says T have blanked out. T indicates that it is actually working on that one, that you're accepting and transmitting and receiving data to those numbers. But what that will do is on your HSD, which is this little screen down here, kind of your situational awareness, and even on the radar, as you sweep over those contacts and receive information from them, it will display anybody on this page, the folks that are part of your data link network, as a blue circle, and it will give them a number. So for example, number 2 right now is listed as 20265. On my HSD, if I see a blue 2 out there, that's trigger. I know where trigger's at. If I see a blue 3 out there, that's iHort. I know where iHort's at. If you're part of the same data link network, it will also share things with you like who everybody's targeting in an airfight, so you can try not to stack up on the same sorts of targets. Data link and all of the things that go with it are really powerful tools, not just for situational awareness, but to make sure that everything that needs to be attacked is getting attacked. And if we hit sequence, it goes back to the first page. So we'll just go return to the main menu page there. I tend to also set my low altitude warning, which is the A low button here, number 2 on this pad. And you can do it in tens of feet. So in the Strike Eagle, I would usually do 75 feet, and this one I do 50 feet rather. You can also set the safe floor in MSL, which will give you the first altitude warning as you're getting low. And for our purposes, we'll leave that as 5,000 feet for today. Fuel gauge is over here on the right. 9,000 pounds is just about what we get for full internals plus the centerline tank. Your lighting controls for your instrument panel and console lighting and floodlights and all that is over here on the right. Of course, this is all the primary avionics power for turning on the MFDs at all. And on the left we have our engine control settings, our air refuel door switch, which I have bound to a HOTAS button for ease of access. IFF control panel, external lights. Good stuff. Radio controls, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can either use a more manual mode with a conventional dial, or you can use the communications panel and just use the DED to set those for you. Another important button here for the F-16 in particular is the stores config, category 1 or category 3. Please don't ask me why there's no category 2. I have no idea why. I mean, even the Navy does things like that where very seldom do you ever see a case 2 approach to a carrier, at least in DCS. You know, in real life it might be a lot more common, but category 1 is maximum limits for the G load. You've got your full range all the way up to 9.9 if you want to throw that jet around. Category 3 is I've got air-to-ground stores or fat fuel bags on the wings or anything along those lines, and it limits the aircraft's flight control system to a lower G number so that you don't break things on the jet. Your parking brake and anti-skid is there. If you have the parking brake on and you engage throttle, it will switch off by default, so be careful about that. Landing gear indicator, emergency stores jettison, good stuff there. Alright, so while we're in here, we need to calibrate our JHICMAS before we leave. So we're actually going to go under miscellaneous, HMCS, which is R, so we're going to hit recall for that. And then we're going to hit dauber right. And we're going to do our course alignment, which is, we hit 0 for that to start that. Use the head tracking, align the 2 crosses together. And we'll hit the button again. This way the helmet mounted display should be largely centered with the center of our vision, which will be important for anything that we want to do with the jet. We're not going to really use any of these things today, but they're still important to talk about while we're sitting here doing a cockpit overview, is the air-to-air and air-to-ground master modes. It does pre-configure some things for you for, you know, what it believes is the most default sort of thing. You will fine-tune those things yourself to things that work for you, because it's important when you get into a fight that you've got everything you need right at the fingertips. By default, it will start with MRMs. If you've got any of them on board the jet. Unfortunately, because DCS likes to make things down to the actual rivet for the ED products, this particular number of rivets does not carry Sparrows, which is very sad for making earlier missions for it. Generally, the way that I fake those in my own historical missions is that I will limit things to like a single pylon somewhere and aim 120Bs instead of Cs. Right now our 9Xs are in slave mode, so it's only facing forward. But if we tap the little button here and put it in bore sight mode, we can use our helmet mounted display and swing that sensor around anywhere we like. Now the other important thing to realize too is that setting those things up in advance, if you go back into air-to-air mode, it remembers the setting. So you don't have to fumble around for it if you've programmed it ahead of time going, hey, if I get into a fight, I want my 9Xs to be in bore sight mode, I want to be able to look and shoot. We're going to have a great time with it. Preemptively set it in bore. That way, if you need to get into a fight, you can. Air to ground is kind of the same way. It'll remember all of your different settings. And when you flip back to air to ground, it will keep those things configured for you. In both of your MFDs, these middle 3 sections are programmable. So like right now, this is on the fire control radar. I can take this one here and tap the button twice and say, I want my targeting pod on that. Very cool. Got our pod there, great time. It tells you no soy, or not soy rather, which is not an indicator that it's not vegetable-based bean food. It is sensor of interest. So this tells you that right now your controls, such as your radar steering bug or anything that you would use for targeting or zooming or anything else, is not applying to this particular panel. And maybe here on the other time we're going to go with our head. Now what we can use, and we're going to talk about this a lot as we move through in future training missions here with it, as we talk about the F-16, is DMS and TMS. And DMS is the display management system. And that's where we can choose through an up, down, left, or right, whether or not we are using a sensor as soy. Like if I go DMS down, one tap, it puts this front left MFD, it's got a little white box around it. This tells you this is now soy. This is now the sensor of interest. We can also use DMS left to toggle between our 3 pages, very much like the F-15 with pre-programming its MFDs. And if we do DMS right, it will do the same for the right MFD. This way you can keep your hands on the equipment rather than switching down to your mouse and trying to fumble around for buttons and switches and whatnot when you're trying to fight. So for now we're going to go ahead and leave this in navigation mode. We are going to go ahead and taxi up and take off. And we'll carry on for our mission today. Nose wheel steering is a toggled button, which I have pressed, and it lights up that right hand console there where it says air refueling and NWS. Use the same button for both. Looks like we got some bombers heading up for Gunsmoke 2023. Some fighters on display. Oops. Methinks they had a little bit of an overrun there. I've noticed that here lately with the airbase here. I don't know if that's something new for DCS, but they're not, for whatever reason at Nellis in particular, they're not stopping as they're supposed to with some of those larger aircraft. Alright, so while I'm gently rolling ahead here, and I've got a couple of minutes, or less, our mission is going to be to take off from Nellis. We're going to fly north, rendezvous with Texaco 11, get some gas, come on back and land back at Nellis. Talking about this aircraft and all of the fancy things it can do the whole way along. If you're in a scramble situation and you know exactly what you want to do with the aircraft, you can have this thing ready to fight, ready to roll, starting its taxi in about 1.5 to 2 minutes. Full tilt, startup, alignment, getting all your panels mostly situated, and then, you know, configuring whatever else still needs to be configured as you're rolling down the taxiway. The F-16 is also one of the first aircraft that we produced that had a true unobstructed view bubble canopy. Now, it's only got the one frame there in the back, far removed from the pilot's general concern about line of sight. It's got a slight golden tint to it, which you can change if you like in special settings. But this completely unobstructed view really does, you can feel it, especially when we've been flying the F4 for the last few weeks, how cramped and confined the visual space on that glass is. All right, here we go. Thunderbirds, let's run them up. Fuel consumption is really going to be the game that that makes or breaks an F-16 driver. That's 100% accurate. All right, we are airborne. The gear's coming up. And backing off the throttle to the detent. That said, though, her engine is potent enough that you can probably manage 350 or 400 knots with her in most situations, depending upon how heavily you've loaded her up. We got plenty of atmospheric presence of aircraft here. It's kind of hanging out. We're just going to go ahead and keep climbing as not to conflict with them. The helmet-mounted sight really is a major game changer for a lot of things. As we talk about some of the other features of the jet, I'm just going to touch loosely on a couple of them. Going in and out of dogfight mode, the radar is off by default in dogfight mode, but with TMS up, it's the target management system, you can turn on the radar system and, you know, it'll go into like an auto acquisition mode. You can do that as well with the helmet-mounted sight. Like, let me go ahead and drop it into dogfight mode. We're going to go TMS up to turn the radar on because it says no rad before. And if I go TMS up again, I get a little circle out here. And I can actually use the radar to just go, I want to kill this guy. And it'll keep the seeker head on him. Now it's just a matter of look, uncage, and shoot. But if I leave dogfight mode, it will put me right back in whatever mode I was in before, including like an air-to-ground type mode. So, you know, one of the things that I did recently and was rather stunned by myself doing it, I got into a dogfight over the top of an artillery position that had some ZU-23 trucks guarding it with an F-14. And I went high into the vertical with him, ear-to-air mode, dogfight mode, everything's all locked up. It was kind of a historical type mission, so, you know, it was an older model F-14, and I was not with the Jahikmas or anything else, so it's all, you know, pure gusto on my part on that one. Way too close for getting a good missile shot, so I was pushing for a gunshot instead. And while I didn't get the kill for that, he was shot down by a missile fired by a wingman of mine. All right, let's go ahead and check in with the range master. we'll follow our steer points here. I did manage to get up and put a burst very close to him. He got shot down. I just continued the loop down, dropped out of dogfight mode. I was back at my Mark 82s. Pipper over the target, pickle 2 bombs, and then roll out and leave. All in a span of about 15-20 seconds, you know, as long as it took to complete the loop and come back down. So, if you have that switchology committed to memory, you can really make things happen. All right, so we're going to pause here very briefly so we can talk about a couple of little things. First is our autopilot switches. They are labeled for what they do. You can set this thing up for an altitude hold in the pitch channel, or an attitude hold in the pitch channel, or autopilot off. This is kind of like a master sort of mode switch there with that. In attitude hold, it will try and maintain the position of your jet in whatever way you've done when you let go of the stick. If you need to change that, you can, of course, move it, and it will then try and attempt to hold that position. Altitude hold will attempt to hold whatever your MSL altitude is currently when you toggle the switch. On the left-hand side, you have the roll channel, which will include the heading selector, such as, I want to fly on this course. So you take your little heading bug, you put it where you want it to go, you hit the heading selector, the aircraft will roll out and do what it needs to do. You have attitude hold, which is just as self-explanatory, such as, you know, I'm in a left-hand orbit. You know, I want to just set myself up for a nice left-hand orbit at 20,000 feet. Climb up to 20,000 feet, you can't use attitude hold and altitude hold on this channel at the same time. You just hit altitude hold. You leave this one in the middle. Turn the jet to your desired setting for your turn, and then just let it go. It'll do its thing. The lower one here is for steerage select, and that will fly you to whatever your currently selected waypoint is. So the jet can, in fact, more or less fly itself from point A to point B, so long as it's got waypoints to do so. By default, which has taken the DED and going to the return page, it brings up this screen here. One second, gotta capture a sneeze there, sorry about that. And you can see here that it's showing you that you have your UHF radio and your VHF radio and what channels they are tuned to. The current time as a digital readout, what your TACAN channel currently is, and your mode 4 setting for the jet for IFF. By default, the dauber is in the position for steer point. So if you use this up and down arrow, you can change, you know, one at a time, a step at a time from waypoint to waypoint. You can also go under STPT for steer point and either make new steer points or manually select which one you actually want to use at the push of a button. Let's go ahead and unpause here for a second, and we will put ourselves in a steering select altitude hold, which is going to turn us to waypoint 1 because that's selected, but I'm going to go to 2 and then 3. And on the HSD, zoom in just a little bit here, the currently selected waypoint is solid. All other waypoints on the same track are going to be empty circles. You can kind of see where all of the different points are. Since we are covering navigation as one of our features here today, we are going to go ahead and cover TACAN. So we're going to hit TILS, which is TACAN or ILS. It's button 1 here on this display. And that will pull us up into the TACAN menu. With the default box here blank, we're going to do a dauber right, and that will change us from TACAN receive only to transmit receive. And then we can use a little dauber switch to go down to our channel number. See, we've hit waypoint 2, so we're turning for 3 now. And we're going to go with 40 X-ray. So we type in 40, hit enter. And that has a beacon associated with it, which is our tanker that's out there. If we need to go to the Y-band in this blank box, we'll hit 0 and then enter. And if we need to go back to the X-band, we hit 0 in that blank box and do it again. The right-hand side controls the ILS. So for Nellis, for example, we have an ILS channel of 109.10 for runway 21. So I can put in 10910, and we will get ILS information for Nellis. Set us up here for steer point 4. Now I don't want to listen to the ILS beeps this whole damn time, so we're just going to go ahead and turn that off, and we'll turn the TACAN volume down too. You can also encode what the general course heading of the runway is, which will be useful for later. Now down here on this little compass display, the horizontal situational indicator, HSI, we can hit this M button here to change what mode it's in. There's an ILS navigation mode, there's a TACAN navigation mode, ILS TACAN navigation mode, and a navigation mode. Nav will point to your waypoint, which is where this little triangle out here is doing. But we're actually going to use TACAN for now, because we're looking for our tanker. This right-hand knob will set the course and give you the course line and the fore aft line. The left-hand knob will set the heading bug, which is useful if you're going to use the heading select mode for the autopilot, or if you're just looking to have another reference for where you're going. Since we are up here in cruising, I'm going to go ahead and pull the throttles back here. Generally, when I am in a cruise going from point A to point B, I will try and bring the engine down to about 7,000 pounds per hour on the fuel flow meter. And as long as I can maintain nice, easy level flight at that setting, I will leave it in that setting. Otherwise, I'll adjust up or down as needed. And what that will do for us is at 7,000 pounds, give us approximately an hour's worth of flying time. It's kind of a way that you can figure out, how long you're going to be able to be up. TACAN is telling us that our tanker is currently 58.3 miles in closing. The fuel quantity selector will change what this gauge is showing: our reserve tank, internal wing tanks, external center, and everything else. So we can kind of check, hey, is my centerline tank out of gas? It sure is. We're not going to jettison it because I kind of want to fill the thing back up before coming to land, but if we needed to, on either the air-to-air or air-to-ground master modes, there's an SJ button. That SJ button on your SMS is for selective jettison. And it is a matter of just selecting the pylon, for which you have center up front, inboard left right, outboard left right. It will not let you jettison in this fashion the air-to-air missiles on the outer two pylons. Highlight the one that you want, master arm is on, press the pickle button, off it goes. Ryan's going to come on up here and see how we're doing. Got some other aircraft that are out there on their own missions, and we have our tanker. And we can verify is like 48 miles away. And we can see that here. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward just a little bit so we can get up there and actually do some tanking. It'll also give me a second to get some coffee. And I'm actually going to go ahead and roll this over just a little bit and switch from steering select rather to heading on our autopilot channel. Now, not everybody tends to do this with their missions, but I try as best I can to make the name of the aircraft or the aircraft group what it is, what radio channel it's on, and what TACAN it's on, just as a reference point. You can usually find that information in kneeboards as well. And try and fly a little more of an intercept with the tanker. So in this case, Taxico 11 that we want to go talk to and get gas from is on radio channel 252. So we're going to go ahead and hit COM 1, 252, enter. It's important to note that COM 1 is your UHF radio and COM 2 is your VHF radio. The difference between those two frequency bands is that the UHF or ultra high frequency band generally starts around radio channel 226 AM and can't go any lower. Whereas the VHF can get up to, I want to say just a little over 200. It's not quite a perfect overlap there between the two. So you can have two separate radios on the jet in two different bands, but you can only listen to so many different channels on each of those bands at once. On our HUD, while we're cruising here, we can see in the lower right-hand corner that we are set, or that we are about 5 miles away from our indicated waypoint, and that our indicated waypoint is waypoint 4. I can change that to 5, 6, 7, and it will display the range to waypoint. It's kind of the way that that one reads. And the expected time that we would have if we left now to go there and get it. This R with the bracket around it is our current radar altitude over whatever it is we're flying. The HUD displays an MSL over here on the top right. Compass heading is here on the bottom. Our waypoint currently selected is this little diamond that's out here that we could see, which is also useful for the helmet mounted sight as you wheel around, is it'll display where those things are relative to how you're looking on one side of the glass or the other. And of course airspeed in indicated knots. Indicated airspeed in knots is here on the left. Mach number is in the bottom left hand corner. We're doing about Mach 0.72 for our current altitude. And we are in nav master mode. Pick up the pace here just a little bit. 29 miles away. And again, just going to kind of fly the intercept to our guy here. But let's just make sure he can hear us. Go Taxico 11, intend to refuel. This lights up that we're transmitting on UHF. Okay, so this part is important for this top left here because he gives us some good information for tanking. First, he's telling us that we can proceed to pre-contact at an altitude of 17,000 feet. That's where he's at right now. So he's about 2,000 feet over us. And he's flying at 350 knots, indicated airspeed for where he is right now. Basically what that means is that we're going to need to be at right about 350 knots to keep pace with him. And we'll need to be a little bit more than that to catch him if we need to. We got two little dots out here kind of right off the front of our HUD. Those are going to be these two F-15s that are out doing their thing. And our tanker is going to be a little bit out beyond them. We can't quite see him yet. I don't think anyway. Let's take a look. He's kind of a big boy, so might catch a glimpse somewhere. Might also have some specks of dust on the monitor, which, you know, happens. But let's go ahead and get to him. I'm going to go ahead and take the plane in hand and shut off the autopilot. And we're only down to 6,300 pounds, so we've only burned about 3,000 since we took off getting to this point. All the way up north. Easily a good 105 nautical miles away from Nellis. And just cross-correlating with the fact that he's at 17,000 feet, he should be this guy. Let's go ahead and shorten our radar scan distance here. And we'll give him a little TMS up to put him in trackable scan mode. We climbed up to about 20,000 feet, so we need to come back down to catch him. But now we got a little box. We can see where we're going. We're going to go and get in behind him, and then we'll pause the thing again. And we'll talk a little bit about tanker procedure and what we're looking for. We definitely decelerated beneath 350 knots. We're going to need to catch up to get to him, and since I am right here to go get gas, and I've got most of a full tank, we are just going to go ahead and give it the beans here and catch back up. Don't really want to overshoot him again though, so we're not going to go full tilt. Just enough that we can get there in a very reasonable period of time. Okay, he's entering a turn. Try not to catch his wing wake here, because that would be somewhat awful. For today, I am just going to go ahead and look down real quick. Open that air refueling door. We will get situated behind him. And mostly stable flight. You see, as we roll through 350 knots, and we start to either catch him or lose him. Okay, this will work. And pause. Let's go outside of the ship here for a minute. The air refueling door here is located on the F-16 in its spine, very much like the F-4. That door is currently open. We can receive fuel. It's got markings there to tell the boom operator where to stick it. The F-15 keeps its refueling port in the left wing root. So understandably, your alignment's going to be a little different for that compared to the F-16. So what we have here is a KC-135 Stratotanker. This is one that is configured with a boom as compared to an MPRS, which you cannot refuel from in the F-16. I know it has a boom on the end of it, but Eagle Dynamics still hasn't figured out how to charge people $80 for the Super Tanker DLC. So at the moment, the MPRS can only refuel probe and drogue aircraft off of its two refueling nacelles. So for our purposes here, we've got our old trusty standby, a converted Boeing 707 KC-135. When you're coming up to tank, you're going to first start off the left wing. This is the observer's position. And the whole point and purpose behind being about in this spot is to adjust your airspeed, your trim if you need to, which in the F-16, again, you're not trimming in the vertical, because the computer on board the aircraft will hate you for that, as it's going to try and correct for a bunch of different things. But you're going to want to try and get the airspeed roughly in line with the tanker so that you can keep formation and echelon left with the tanker. Anybody on the left side of the aircraft are people who are waiting to refuel. You shouldn't be, stacked up behind it directly, waiting for the person to get on. You shouldn't be off to the right, waiting for them to get on unless you've already gotten your gas, because we're going to talk about that in a second. But the observer's position is really where you want to get everything all finely tuned and controlled for I'm ready to get on and get some gas. Once it's your turn and you are all set up there, you'll slide down into the ready position behind the tanker, called ready pre-contact. And you're going to try and put yourself in a position roughly in this spot, looking through the nose of the aircraft. And you're going to be paying attention to this bank of lights here. And it's important that you kind of memorize what these are and where they are and everything else on that, because you're not really going to have the opportunity to get in super close like this unless you've paused the game or looking at the tanker on the ground through an external camera to really figure it out. So on the left-hand side, we've got U and D, up and down. Those are your command inputs for what you need to do to get back to center. If the light is red and out here towards the U, you are too low and need to come up. Or rather, you are too far up and need to go down. You are too far up, need to come back, follow the arrows down to get back to where you need to be. Reverse is true. The downside there, you need to come up. You're too far down, you need to come up. Actually, no, I think I did get that backwards. It should be the commanded inputs there for you need to come up or you need to come down based on where the lights are, because the opposite side is fore and aft. If the lights are red and near the F section, you are too far backwards and need to come forwards. I'll tell you what your corrective action is. The light is way up here in the front, you are too far forward and need to come aft. So you need to come back. The goal is you want to try and get in the center. The center 3 spots there, the center tick and the one above and the one below are the green lights. And you can kind of be a little varied in that little range, but the most ideal is that dead center spot where it's a green square on both sides. So basically, when you're refueling, that's kind of where your sole fixation is, which is why it's important, if you are waiting to get gas, that you are out here in the observer's position, stacked up with your flight, watching what's going on. And if you're out here waiting for the rest of your flight because you've already gotten your gas, that you're paying attention to what's going on here, because the poor person who's sitting here can't see where the boom is, can't see where you are, and their sole focus is on watching these lights and trying to fly the lights to maintain position with the tanker. Once you get on the boom, it is a little more forgivable about where you're going and what you're doing. If you're in a 2-seat aircraft, the rear seater might be watching this stripe, which goes from this green band to a yellow band to a red band in both directions, indicating that you were either getting too far or too close or too far from the tanker to receive fuel. It will auto-disconnect once you get out of parameters, and then you'll need to start over again a little bit. The boom operator can help you out a little bit, because it's a flying boom. It's got the little wings on it that the boom operator can steer. And once you're connected, they can try and keep that pace with you, make it real easy. But you do have to get in parameters first, which is the biggest difference between this tanker and the any of the probe and drogue ones where you're flying the probe into the basket. You should probably have your lights on when you're doing this one too. It does turn on a light right here that is pointing backwards at the refueling port. Useful at night if you're coming up here to tank. The other thing that I like to do with my own aircraft as well is that I will kick the boards out, these little speed brakes back here, ever so slightly, just to maintain mostly level flight, because it does seem to want to pitch up as speed changes. So we're going to try and get on, we're going to try and grab some fuel, and then we're going to turn around and go back towards landing. Takeoff was pretty self-explanatory. We'll talk about landing and making a nice, safe, straight-in approach here for us. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and unpause it. I'm going to get myself situated again. I had my hands off the HOTAS for a minute. Other important note is that as soon as you open the refueling door, the fly-by-wire control system will deaden a lot of the inputs on the jet automatically. So it's not like it's something that you can go, oh, let me use the autopilot to try and get a quick, you know, a quick retrim for free. And we were a little quick. As you might in some of the older aircraft, the autopilot system is disabled when the refueling door is open. I'm just going to come back out here for a full reset, because that was particularly heinous. The other thing that I like to do a lot with my aircraft is I will bind the same button on my HOTAS across all the platforms. Like I'll set a button aside for it to call out ready pre-contact. That way I don't have to try and fumble through the communications menu to let the tanker know I'm ready for gas. All right, he's straightening out. That'll be a little more helpful for us. So let's go ahead and slip into position. The tanker's lights will turn on, like the exterior lights will turn on at half a mile, but the lights under the aircraft aren't going to tell you where you are. Yeah, there we go. So it's on the upside, which means I need to go up. That light is green. I'm just trying to get in a good position here for the other one. Once I'm in good parameters, I'm not making a whole lot of rapid adjustments. The boom will try and stick the aircraft. Dealing with tankers in a turn is going to be a skill that is one to practice. As they do like to make turns. Okay, we're connected. All right. So this tells us lets us know we're in good shape. We are connected. Getting gas. We're in pretty good parameters on the fuel. Probably going to lose it here in just a minute. But one of the other chief advantages in particular for this type of refueling is that the fuel flow on the KC-135 due to the rigid boom is just about twice as fast as getting it from a flexible hose from the other tankers. Especially in an aircraft where you've really only got between 7 and like 11,000 pounds worth of gas on board, you're going to get that back really quick. So one of the other advantages you got, especially flying the F-16 or if you're flying with a flight, is that you're not going to need to spend forever on the tanker. So if you can practice getting onto it real easy, staying with it for a little while, half a minute or so, you should be able to get most of your gas in that time frame and possibly even top off the tank. So I'm going to try and unpause this and maintain position. It is a game of moving the throttles back and forth a lot because you need to try and fly a little bit ahead of the aircraft because you're never going to maintain a perfect, absolutely stable position. You got two aircraft in relative motion flying through space at the same time. there's going to be a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of back and forth. That's normal. So your throttle is always going to be in motion. It's very much a hands-on process, getting the refueling done. And we're going to probably fall off here in a second.
Contact.
Yep.
You're taking fuel.
When you've disconnected, that little light in the lower right-hand corner of the HUD will transition to ready. Which is where it's at right now. It will briefly flash disconnect, which is the lower number there when it comes off. Oop. I want to bump the tail with them. And if you're all over the place with the inputs, which can happen, you can pull back and try and reset. Especially if you got uneven loading on the jet and you're caught in a turn and the weather's bad and you're not sure where things are, you can always pull back and reset. Yeah, that's not working out. Pull back a little ways, and we're going to make another approach. Nice, easy, gentle control movements is key. Don't really want to ham fist it. Light pressures. Once you get there, it's just formation flying. You're close in with a big aircraft, yep. That's very true. But slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Oh, he would go stable right as I was getting hooked in on him. It's okay. Big thing is you just don't want to collide with anybody. As if I go quiet here for it. Just trying to focus on those control inputs a little more. Too far forward. wiggle it on back. It's been a minute since I've done this with the aircraft. I'm going to have to practice that till it becomes a little more second nature and smooth. Let him get out in front of us again. 5,200 pounds. Yep, that's kind of where it's at. That's why I got the speed brakes out just a little bit. Keep the nose ever so slightly down. But she does still like to lift. Alright. Reset again. I guess this is tanker practice for me now, too. Which I might end up flying this thing a lot more often. This is the F4, it'd have been done by now. Oh, you bastard.
Ready, recontact.
That was really, really close, but did not give me all of the deceased dinosaurs that I need. All right. Come on, boom operator, don't let me down. Yeah, I knew that wasn't going to work. We kissed. Still have a nose. We're very much not invulnerable. Now let's do a quick abort rejoin.
Texaco 1-1, Springfield 1, request rejoin. Springfield 1, Texaco 1-1, proceed to pre-contact at 17,000 at 350.
Let's do a complete reset on him and see if maybe that'll get him to cooperate a little more with the boom.
Ready, pre-contact. Cleared contact.
Okay, clear contact, good. Try and give ourselves a little bit of a walking pace here.
Contact. Return pre-contact. Contact. You're taking fuel.
Thank God. Whoop, 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 whoop. Disconnect. Ready.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
All right, we're plugged. Disconnect. Up 5,000 pounds. Straightening out. Less helpful for our initial approach. Just got to play the wiggle game here with him and try and maintain our position as he turns. Disconnect, but we're up to 6,000 pounds. Finding the groove again there with him because we're staying on a little longer each time, which when you're practicing, when you're refamming, when it's new, signs you're getting right back to it. Like any skill in DCS, they're extremely perishable.
Contact.
So if you don't occasionally go up and make yourself do them,
You're taking fuel.
you're going to have a little period of time where things are going to be all over the map.
Contact. Return free contact.
That's why we spend so much time getting together, doing training stuff, and trying to fly fairly often with the group. Because if I had a whole flight waiting on me by now, they'd have probably been dropping out of the sky like flies. Honestly, I probably would have just spent more time in the observer slot and
Contact.
gotten myself under control
Return
here.
free contact.
And let everybody else refuel.
Contact. You're taking fuel. Contact. You're taking fuel.
Okay. Getting warmer. You're oscillating pretty badly. Let's get that under control. Preferably without tail striking the tanker again. He's actually doing about 252 to 254 knots.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
£8,100, another 1,000 to go. We're going for transfer complete. That's what I want to hear. Because at this point, it's a point of pride. Appreciate the folks that are watching there. And as we're struggle busing a little bit with doing this for the first time in a while. At least in this aircraft. Yeah, for a bunch, but been a minute since I've flown the 16. And come up to refuel.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
It's a disconnect. We're very nearly in position still.
Contact. Return free contact.
8,400 pounds. Just try not to use everything we gain just to catch back up.
Return free contact. Ready free contact. Cleared contact. Contact. You're taking fuel.
Okay, caught him in the turn. Just gotta stay. Oh, we lost it. Got a little too close. A little too far forward, rather.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
God, that's a good feeling.
Transfer complete.
Finally getting the damn groove.
Disconnect.
Alright, so we've got our gas. We're going to fall back straight. After having communicated with our wingman that that's what we're doing. And then we will reform right on the right side of the aircraft as we did on the left side of the aircraft earlier with the observer position. Normally we would wait for everybody to get their gas. But since it's just us, we're going to go ahead and climb away and head for home. Thanks, Lancer. Appreciate that. Welcome to the chat. It's been a minute since I've done air refueling in the 16. And I know that shows. And it's not an excuse, but, you know, that's where we are. Okay, so for now, we're going to go ahead and start heading back towards Nellis. And we will set ourselves up with a waypoint to do so. First thing I'm going to do, though, is go ahead and put ourselves in an autopilot hold for home. No, I do fingertip on the stick rather than the trim hat. Trimming the aircraft in the vertical tends to make it a little upset. So I just do very light control inputs with the stick. Alright, hitting select, attitude hold. Oh, we still have the door open, but that won't work. Actually, altitude hold. Alright, so while we are all ready to roll there on that, let's go ahead and make ourselves a waypoint. I likely already have one here for this base, but I'm going to go ahead and include one anyway. Let's see which one has, I think it's 20 or 21. Yeah. Let's go ahead and set ourselves a waypoint up for 21 right. Utilizing the DCS modes here. And that's going to be that left alt, left click, and it's going to give us all the different coordinates in every different way that you could probably encode those in DCS. The one that we're going to be using is lat long decimal minutes. Is this one here. Come back up here to our DED, go to steer point, and select ourselves a blank waypoint. And we're just going to go ahead and dip on down here and encode it. So we're looking to do a latitude, which we're going to go with north. It's 2. There's a little in there. It's smart enough to figure out which one you want to do. And just type the number in as it appears without putting any decimals in there, because it will do that itself. Enter. Drop her down. It's going to be our east and west. In this case, we are in the western hemisphere, so it is going to be a westing. Hit the W there. And it's 3 digits, so it's 115 instead of 015 or anything like that as you would on some other maps. 01 or 76. Good to go. And then the elevation in feet. 1857. There we go. So now steer point 9, as we can see here on our display, is this lit up one all the way out there. That's one way that we can use to get home and use the navigation system that way. And if we see nav, we can see our little itty bitty triangle there is pointing us to where we need to go. It says it's 94 miles away. But we also know that Nellis has a TACAN station, so we can come back to our TACAN ILS. We were set up for the tanker, which is on our 40 X-ray channel. And we're going to change that to 12. LSV channel 12, there's our beacon. And it will show you the beacon's name, LSV, and the channel, channel 12. I've turned the TACAN volume down, but if I bump that up here for a minute, when we get information for it, it will start to beep. But TACAN, like everything else in terms of radio transmissions or beacon navigation or anything else like that, relies on line of sight. So at the moment, while we're up at 19,000 feet, there's a lot of folks coming back in from, I think these guys are flying in from, tailcoat did I give them? Come on, Texture. I know you're not flat black. There we go. Oh yeah, they're coming from Iowa. That's right. Flying in for the red flag or the gun smoke or anything else that's going on here at Nellis Land. But anyway, since we are still behind a mountain relative to that base, it's not actually giving us any information. So if you've encoded the TACAN beacon correctly and you're still not seeing anything there for it and you are on transmit receive, you can verify all of those different settings. Then the next thing to keep in mind is going to be, you know, do I have a large piece of rock in between me and what I'm trying to listen for? Especially in the case of something like a carrier, not that we have many here because the Lake Mead Dry Lake Bed recreational area is not something where I could put a boat that big on it. But if hypothetically we were on a map that had an ocean out there and you had a carrier on it and there was some sharp crested hills immediately inboard, there's pretty good odds you're going to lose the TACAN beacon for at least a little while, depending upon your altitude and how you're flying. Just going to do some time compression here as we start cruising for home. And there we go. Now we're getting the TACAN information. This tells us that our beacon here is about 53 miles away, slightly right of our nose. And from time to time we might even start hearing the little chirps. I was actually born and raised on Nellis Air Force Base for the first 7 years of my life, and still live here in town. It's one of the reasons why when I do a lot of my training sorties and things like that, especially for something like this, I almost always choose the NTTR. It's a fun town. It's certainly grown in the last 40 years, for better or for worse. I remember whenever we'd go wandering into church, go right through that main gate just off of Craig Road, and from time to time they change out the little banner that they have there. This is Welcome to Nellis Air Force Base, and they'd show some of the current results about, you know, where the different bomber or fighter groups are going, and, you know, their results and all of that. Sometimes it'd be interesting if there's different exercises going on, watching some of the other foreign pilots coming through, occasionally catching sight of a British or a German, or even once an Indian uniform for the Indian Air Force. It was interesting. Yeah, you can even catch it. There's a movie on YouTube. It was kind of a made-for-TV film with Barry Bostwick and William Devane, called Red Flag: The Ultimate Game. You can catch that one for free on YouTube. It's a wild ride to look at for Nellis Air Force Base circa 1980, and in some ways how little of it's changed. And they've got a couple of scenes towards the very end out in front of the same chapel right there. It's the church I got confirmed in. Pretty much grew up here the entirety of existence there. In fact, I didn't do it on this mission, but the other NTTR training mission that I built for this one that we've done a lot of our F4 flying on, I actually put, as close as I could anyway, the Gate Guardians that are out there at Freedom Park. All the different aircraft that are up there. Oh, nice. Very nice. Always nice to meet folks that participate in things like that or supported the efforts on the flight line. Sad a lot of that changed with the events of 9/11. In terms of some of the access or being able to talk to some folks, or occasional school field trips if they could be organized to like visit the Thunderbirds hangar or talk with some of the different pilots and folks. Very nice. Alright, let's go ahead and get in here. We'll get situated. Try and get ourselves on the ground. The 16 certainly has some easy ways about going about doing this. Rather than do an overhead brake, because I'm going to take some time to talk about all this kind of stuff, let's do a straight in here for our runway. Lining up on 21 left. As we poke through the cloud here. Nope. Wrong toggle switch there in my HOTAS. But we do have our little diamond there for our waypoint. And the TACAN beacon. I think that was actually looking at the TACAN beacon because it's just in between the two runways. Are still considerably high. But we'll come on down here and we'll do this one the fast way. Try not to drop the gear above 300 knots. That can cause its own problems. I tend to try and lower them somewhere around 250. But that will change our HUD and give us some new indicators. I could do a couple S-turns here, but I think we got plenty of room here. That's actually really interesting. I may have to go check that one out with some of the folks. A lot of the folks on Pantheon enjoy doing things on the NTTR map. It's really one that doesn't get as much love as it should. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pause here for a minute as we are on our way in. We ourselves, our gear is down, our pedals are out, as those are, from what I understand, supposed to be out for landing full-time here in the 16. Kind of similar, I guess, to the F-14A, where, having the breakout allows you to keep the engine revved up enough that if you got aboard, it's easy to do that fast. We are coming back with extra weight on the wings, where in some cases you may not. But here on the HUD, we've got this little dotted line that is approximately 3 degrees nose up. The our flight path marker. And we got this this little bracket bar here. And the bracket bar is where we really want to put our flight path marker, right about in the middle, and try and line up all of these different things. Our dotted line, the flight path marker, and this little vertical bar here, where we want the rear wheels for the main landing gear to touch down. Oh, cool. Very cool. Very cool to know. But we're going to put basically all those things right where we want the mains to kind of gently touch down. And at that point, we should just control our airspeed, as the stick is going to be a little less helpful for, maintaining where we want to go. The throttle is going to be how we control our rate of descent. and we were going to touch down on the main landing gear, try and keep the nose up, do a little bit of aero braking with that, and then let the nose naturally fall onto the runway on its own, and then apply some brake pressure and come to a complete stop. Or taxi off, whichever way it works. The other thing too is you don't want to engage the nose wheel steering while you're above 100 knots, as very bad things can happen in the aircraft, and that you can kind of roll that thing sideways down the side of the runway and send scattered parts of aluminum in all different directions, which is fun for no one. Nobody likes that, so don't do it. Now keep the nose wheel steering off, control your movement on the runway if you need to with the rudder and some brake, and as you slow down, then you can turn the nose wheel steering on and make some finer control inputs for that. We'll worry about an ILS, actual needles approach, and everything else at a later time as we do some night work here in town and future training sorties. But for now, let's just go ahead and we'll put this down kind of the fast and convenient way of just using the flight path marker, the bracket, and so using the bracket, it will let us use our AOA indexer here, as it's indicating that we are a little fast and need to slow down. All right, let's go and unpause here, and we will take care of all of that and touch down very gently here at Nellis. I don't know if it'll let links be posted here. I tend to have those locked down there for it. But it should at least show me what it is if it doesn't display it to the room. So yeah, I should be able to get it that way. Alright, a little wobbly. I think I'm flying through somebody's wake here. We had all those aircraft coming in. Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely some airplanes that are down on the other end of the runway here with us. We're just adjusting our speed, trying to keep everything together. Give ourselves a little bit of a flare here to soften that approach. And gentle kiss. Keep the nose up. Trying to use the whole leading edge of that wing as best we can as a giant brake. And the nose wheels come down, we'll apply some brake pressure. Falling down through 100 knots. I'm still straight and level, don't need any massive adjustments there, so I'm going to leave the nose wheel steering off. And now we're under the registered speed indicator there, so it's showing 0. Go ahead and turn the nose wheel steering on and we'll taxi off. It's actually really cool to hear. One of the things that we used to do with PI was try and fly the F-5s and do some aggressor type stuff with some other flight groups and things, which worked out a little bit. Let me see if it shows me that link. Maybe. Maybe not. Oh, let me click back into DCS before I do that, because I'm about to roll off the end of the runway, which is also fun for nobody. I'll park myself in a hangar here and then we can take a look and make sure I got that information on it. Not all. Okay, there you go. Thanks, Lancer. Appreciate it. Sorry it's a little clunky there for that. Just trying to keep the internet a little more safe with folks' random links and stuff going downrange. Why we got that setting for blotting out a lot of that. Yeah, I know a lot of the other boys. I like doing things in TTR, and they certainly enjoy doing historical missions. A lot of the ones that we've been doing lately and the ones that I'm building for our monthly campaign missions for Pantheon are all themed for like 1980 to 1989, so there's more limited armaments, limited aircraft, that kind of thing. Really kind of the F4's hunting ground. It's a little rougher to try and use the F-16 in there, even though earlier models and marks would be available. But try and make it fair and make it work. It's just a pity ED did not give me Sparrows to put on the jet. Nothing wrong with a little Warthog action. As a kid growing up, once we moved off base, while Dad was still active duty, we were more or less kind of on one of the approach points for runway 03, left or right. So occasionally you could just sit out in the backyard and look up and hear the sweeps of the F-15 coming through, or watch some of the big bombers come in, or the other support aircraft if they ever use that approach path coming into the base. Would not trade that experience for the world. Alright, coming back to our little shelter here. Don't need to go all the way down to the Thunderbird hangar, because that's not us. We're here to blow stuff up, not make pretty smoke trails and recruit. So today we didn't, but in future sorties we will. Oh, 4th of July was always a riot too. Kind of Freedom Park on the base and all the families and everything out there and the fireworks and different time. Alright, anyway, we are here. We got the brakes held. Go ahead and open the canopy up and shut down the jet. I don't think we can actually call for chocks, but so
Place the wheel chocks.
see if they actually do it.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now in place.
Oh, they did. Look at that. Tuck our speed brake in so we don't have a bunch of protruding nonsense for the crew chief, who's probably very insistent that I take care of their jet. And we'll put the throttle down in the downward lock. And ask somebody very kindly to either put the ladder next to the jet and or extend any of the boarding ramp equipment. We can get on and do our thing. But that's been our first week here with DCS Teaches the F-16. A little bit of overview, some takeoff, some landing. Talked a little bit about the aircraft itself. It is a joy to fly. I do enjoy flying this aircraft a lot. If I had an all-time favorite, it would be the F-15E for assorted reasons. Unfortunately, Razbam and ED and their spat with all of that is taking a little bit of the wind out of the sails on that one. While I can absolutely... What are you doing, camera? Stop that. There. It's all over the map with it. Unfortunately, with that spat, it's making things like the multi-crew desync on it more and more of a problem. We're missing weapons still with the aircraft, like the GBU-15 or the AGM-130, which I think would be hilarious to try and employ those in a situation or a scenario. Get in and toss bomb that thing and just send that rocket up to the moon and let that GBU-15 component come down and data link it onto a target. That'd be all kinds of wild, and I'm here for it. I like getting down in the mud with the mud hen. It's all kinds of fun. But we'll survive with the F-16 and the F-4 and a lot of the other products that they have out there that are fully functional and working right now. And fingers crossed they actually solve something in a meaningful way and ED gets Razbam the money that they are owed. That's really all I've got to say there on that one. So with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude here for tonight. Yeah, oh, man after my own heart there, Lancer. Absolutely. Absolutely. But at any rate, next week we're going to go ahead and continue with some of the air-to-ground weapons, some of the dumb bombs, cluster bombs, some of the smart bombs and things on that with the jet. That's going to be next Saturday's take on all the things that we do with this aircraft. We'll move on to other things like using the HARM, using the HTS. If I can corral up IHORT and Trigger at the same time, we can get in there and actually use the HTS to get down to a PGM-1 sensitivity there to identify and attack a site together with the F-16, which is one of the things that it can do. That's going to be a lot of fun for that. Appreciate the follow there, Phoenix Ag 3. With that, though, we are going to go ahead and close things out as we always do. Go with a little bit of our week-to-week schedule. Today was Saturday. We did Pilum Teaches DCS on Saturday. Today we didn't really have a whole lot in the way of actual, like, go-get-'em combat type stuff. But nevertheless important, as you got to be able to take the aircraft off, go out, figure out where the hell you're going, get some gas, turn right back around, come back home, and land it safely if you're going to do anything meaningful with it in more than one sortie. Appreciate the follow, Lancer. Thank you very much. If you decide you wish to spend some of your Amazon Prime Twitch dollars here and support the channel that way, I very much appreciate it. It's not required, of course, but that is up to you. If you prefer to tip more directly, you can do that too at coffee.com/PilumJRomar. Again, not required, entirely up to you. I'm just thankful for the follows and the people that are here watching every week. And catch this and other VODs on the YouTube channel and at Pilum Romar. This will probably be a little later on in the week when I get that one posted back up. It's been kind of busy here at work the first of the year. As far as our week-to-week schedule, Monday we're going to be doing DCS Monday starting at 6 p.m. I'll be flying on the Pantheon servers and mostly just kicking around for my sake on that one, which is always a good time. We follow that up with classic games right around 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm going to be starting with a Nintendo platformer on this one for this week. We're going to be starting it with Mega Man 1, which is going to be an interesting time as we roll back to my childhood on that one. Friday night, we generally play Arma 3. That starts at 6 p.m. We missed yesterday. I don't know what we're going to look at like for this coming Friday. Maybe we'll do something different than Arma 3, like Gray Zone or Helldivers or something. We'll figure it out. And then once again, Saturday morning next week, we'll be back for more Pilum Teaches DCS. So, with that, always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can with your partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Have a fantastic day. Pilum out.